What's up, y'all? It's your boy Romance coming through with another episode of The World According to Romance. This is part 2 of my series on the Celts, the history of the Celts. Today we're going to do Celtic roots and origins, and we're going to start out in about 2200 to 1900 BC, and we're going to start, basically, alright, and a lot of this video is going, again, this is the Celts. I identify as a Celt. If you haven't seen the first video, there's a lot of, personal stuff going on with this video that's not present in a lot of my other history videos. So, there's a funky thing going on with history, especially if you're trying to find out the history of white people, Caucasians. I hate the word Caucasian. Scientifically, we're known as Indo-Europeans. Don't like that term. And I really hate the term white boy, but I still call myself, we all call ourselves that in this hateful age we live in. But there's something going on in academia, and it's been going on throughout the 20th century. It was going on before Hitler, because there was a lot of racism in the beginning of the 20th century. It's when the Ku Klux Klan was at its biggest. There was a lot of things that have been suppressed over the years, and there was a lot of occultists. There was a lot of there was neo-Nazism before there was even Nazism. You know what I mean? And so there was a lot of throughout the 20th century. There's been a lot of hesitancy from scholars to talk about the origins of white Caucasians, the white race, whatever. So it's almost like if you do your research, it's like they don't tell you the truth. They don't want to piss nobody off. And it's strange because most of academia is Caucasian. It's mostly white people that work at universities, but they're so politically correct, they don't want to talk about their own history. Or at least they want to give you a watered down version of it. And it's almost like if you do your history, it's like white people just dropped out of the sky in 2000 BC, and we just didn't exist before that. But understanding the Celts is important to me, and I think it's important to you because I think a lot more of you out there have Celtic DNA and genes and traits than you give yourselves credit for or understand or know. There are 3 subdivisions of, again, I hate it, but saying this term, white people. There are Slavs. There are Germans. Slavs are the easternmost and the least. I understand the least amount of information about them. Then there's the Germans. They occupy most of Central Europe, and we all know about them through the last century of war. And then there's the oldest of them all, the Celts. And today we're going to talk about. Now you understand a little bit about the Celts, what the characteristics of Celts. You've had to see it. You have to, between St. Paddy's Day and all the media, so Braveheart, etc. You get kind of the gist of what the characteristics are. Well, it's strange because opening this is going to be a long video. All right, so the opening this story is, and the oldest that I can offer to you, is about, like I said, in Xinjiang, China. Okay, I'm going to repeat myself. Xinjiang, China. Now, Xinjiang means outermost, or borderlands, or something like that in Chinese. It's a province of Western China. It's the outermost region of China. There's not even a lot of ethnic Chinese there. There's a lot of strange Kyrgyzstan and Turkestan type people there today. But it's in the Gobi Desert. And right around 1988 through 92, they started finding all these mummies that are just perfectly freeze-dried and preserved. They're so perfectly preserved that when they found them, when the archaeologists discovered them, they thought they were still alive, or somebody who died last week. Like, they still have hair, they still have fat in their faces, they still have like color in their cheeks. It's crazy, dude. These mummies, you can look it up on the internet. Xinjiang, Xinjang, I think it's spelled. And here's the catch, okay? This is China. These are mummies, freeze-dried. They date from about 2000 BC, so they're 4,000 years old. These mummies are, they have hair. They have red hair. We can't tell what color their eyes are because those faded away and decomposed, but they're wearing plaid. Believe it or not, yes, they're rocking plaid. They're buried all over the place with horses. They were buried with horses and chariots, which is another thing that it's believed that the Celts or the Protoceltz were some of the first people, because the Celts came from the Russian steppes, and that's not too far away from Xinjiang, China. It's definitely doable if you have horses, okay, and chariots and everything. So and the Chinese government has like shut down all the studying of them. They're being total dicks about archaeologists getting over there and studying them. They don't want people in the rest of the world to know about it. But not only did they look, it's not like they were just wearing, and like the women, there's a beautiful mummy. She's called the Xinjiang Beauty. She's a woman who's probably 30 years old. She has huge braids of red hair in the same knotwork that you see all over Europe. These are Protoceltz, okay, and these are in China, okay. It's believed that the Celts, all white people were called Caucasians because the Caucasus Mountains are in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and it's just south of the Russian steppe, just north of what we now call Iran. Iran is the same word as Aryan, okay, and now we call ever since Hitler destroyed that word for us, it is a pretty good, I think Aryan is a good term for white people, because the original Aryans is where they came from, Iran, and it's either there, Sumeria, Turkey, like where the Hittites came from, somewhere in that region is where I believe that white people originated from. We've moved to Europe and Russia and all these other places and proliferated, but our original homeland was there, somewhere like in the eastern Middle East. Maybe a lot of what I was studying, they kept saying Turkmenistan. Anytime you see the word S-T-A-N on the end of it, that is, Stan is the Sanskrit word for land. And Sanskrit was what the Aryans spoke. Now, we're going to move from the Xinjiang mummies onto the Aryans. Now, who are the Aryans? Aryans are a group of people that came from what's now Iran into northwest India in around about 1500 BC. And again, they brought horses. They were masters of horses, chariots, speed. They were not into farming the land and making plants. They were meat eaters. They brought huge cows were big, huge deals. Cows were very important, and there's tons of evidence of them bringing huge herds of cows and huge herds of horses when they either migrated or attacked. Now today, in the modern world, and definitely in India, they're getting away from the idea that the Aryans sacked and attacked India and that they just migrated there. Now, one of the four breadbaskets of civilization, you got Egypt on the Nile, you got Mesopotamia on the Tigris and Euphrates, you got Peking, China. That's like they had civilization in like 4000 BC, like 6,000 years ago. There was cities, apartments, tax collectors, farms, everything that cities have. And then there was one other place, the Indus River Valley, and now there's almost like nothing there. It's I think it's Pakistan is where that is at modern day. But like there was a civilization there that like collapsed right around 1500 BC. So I do think, I hate saying it, but I do think there was an Aryan invasion. It wasn't just a migration. But in India, they're not trying to hear that shit in this day and age. A lot of people like deny that in India, like people that are actual Hindus now. They don't want to believe that white people moved in, basically started the caste system, basically gave them their ancient language of Sanskrit, their religions. There's people who deny that, especially people that are like stalwart Hindu nationalists. Like Gandhi was one of those people. He wanted to create help create the state of India. All right, it's believed, and from now the Hinduism as a religion is old. It's believed to be right around that time, 2000 to 1500 BC is when it entered India, and when definitely the Rig Veda, the Hinduism has, like, we have the Bible, that's just one book. Hinduism has, like, there's 4 major ones called the Vedas. I know of another one called the Ramayana. All of that, and there's a bunch, there's like 3 or 4 more that are like big, huge, important, like scriptural books for the Hindu religion. That they're all written in Sanskrit, and Sanskrit, it's determined that that is not a original Indian language. It is an Indo-European language. It is related not to anything in India, but it's related to Latin, it's related to Greek, it's related to Celtic, it's related to German, it's related to Lithuanian, it's related to all these, like Romanian, all the Hittite, all the European family of languages. So, and also, now to this day, when you go to India, they don't eat cows. Cows are sacred there. They don't even eat meat, and that stems from this ancient religion. The caste system stems from this ancient religion, and that was probably very, very racial. It was definitely based. And when you read the Vedas, I've read a little bit of them, and they read really racistly. Okay, like it's like the forces of light came in and conquered the dark demons. Like the whole book, all the Vedas are worded like that. So it's that was believed to be the Aryans, you know. And again, Celts do not believe in writing. They thought it was sacrilegious to write. It was somehow perverse, profane to write things down. So we don't have, just like with Celts all across the board throughout the series, I'm going to keep saying it, all we have is the writings of like their enemies and people they were either attacking or getting attacked by. And we don't have any writings of the Aryans proper. We have, once they've come to India, they settled and kind of took things over. That's when they the Vedas started getting writing down. They were basically sung on like guitars and sitars and shit for a long time before they were written down later on. So we don't have any actual snapshots of what these people were saying. But the Aryans are from what's now Iran, and they came to India, and I don't want to say they started India, but the legend has it that they came with their herds of cattle and their herds of horses. They were driven by a god named, and this was not an original Indian god, named Indira, okay? Or Indira, Indra, okay? And Indra was a thunder god. He was the king of the gods. He carried a thunderbolt. The Indus River is named after him, and therefore all of India is also named after this god, okay? And he's almost exactly identical to Jupiter, to Zeus, to Odin, to Wotan, to Lug, all right? Those are all pretty much the same deities. He's king of the gods, father of the fathers, type deities. So that's the Protoceltz in India. And again, another real important thing that brings home why this is important is that today in India, people believe in reincarnation. They don't believe in heaven and hell. They believe that you have to live a good life, and you have to live a good life physically in your body. That's called dharma. And then you have to live a good life spiritually, and that's called karma. We all know that word, okay? That's definitely something that came to India from the Aryans. Just history doesn't tell us that stuff, but Rishi Romance is now telling you, all right? And then finally, we're going to move over to Turkey and talk about the Hittites. Now, I don't have, they were old, their Hittites are old too. Their civilization collapsed in about 1200 BC. In 1500 BC, they were at their height. But even as early as 2000 BC, they were, the Hittites lived in what's now Turkey. They called it Anatolia in the ancient world. It wasn't called Turkey's until maybe not even 600-700 years ago, when the Turks began their conquest of the Anatolia. And then ever since then, there's so many Turks there, it's called Turkey. But the Hittites were from there, and they, it's possible that they are Proto-Celtic too. They kind of like, you know, once their civilization collapsed, they moved into Europe, and then first Germany, then, you know, west until you get to Ireland and, you know, Scotland, where the last Celts survive to this day. The reason that the Hittites are important is because aside from cows, aside from horses, aside from reincarnation, another important defining characteristic of the Celts is that they were masters of iron, and they were one of the earliest iron makers. The Hittites were one of the first people to do it. They had iron even in the Bronze Age. Celts were masters of iron working. They were master smiths, and it's possible they got that from the Hittites. Somehow the collapse of the Hittite Empire, which I went over in my Sea Peoples video and my whole Trojan War series, that somehow was an offshoot. But in the last people I'm going to talk in the Proto-Celts today is the Scythians. The Scythians are the closest thing to the Celts. They are described by my boy Herodotus describes them as tall, fair-skinned, red-haired. Now, they lived in what is now Siberia, but like they too were masters of horses. And if you have horses, like even though Russia and Siberia is mad big, it's like 1/10 of the Earth's landmass is Russia. You know, there is actually, and you think of Siberia as a frozen tundra. Most of it is. And then there's the Gobi Desert, which I talked about with the Xinjiang mummies. That's in Asia too, but Asia's a big place, and there is a strip of land that is basically what we would call prairie, but scientists and archaeologists call it steppe, S-T-E-P-P-E. It's just grassland that's perfect for horses. Horses probably originated in that area. Okay, with the Mongols later on, the Huns later on would all be masters. Like they're all from that area, and they all relied heavily on horses. And the Celts were basically like NASCAR fans from 4,000 years ago. You know, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. They loved speed. Even the word car is one of the few Celtic words that has come to us from Celtic languages. The word car is related to the word carpentry, because to make chariots and wheels, you had to be good with wood. Actually, they were made, the tires were made somehow out of wood, the spokes and everything. So the word carpentry and the word car are related to us. Also, the word cartwright, I believe, is what somebody who makes wheels, I think. Anyway, the Scythians were pretty much an offshoot of Celts, or they coexisted pretty much the same time as the Celts. They were kind of the eastern cousins, the wilder, crazier eastern Celts, while the Celtic civilization was flourishing in Europe between 1000 BC and Julius Caesar's time, which is about 0 AD, that 1,000 years of the Iron Age. You know, the Scythians were living in Central Asia. So, and their artwork, in Russia, there's all these mounds that they found from like Peter the Great all the way up to the present, that are filled with grave goods, these rich grave goods. So the Scythians did trade, but they also could create. They were master smiths, and there's these beautiful items, these grave goods that are just they're all animals twisted and eating each other, and you know, there's this one comb that's all for a girl's hair that was in the grave. That's like a bunch of animals fighting each other, horses getting eaten by lions and stuff like that. Like, really beautiful artwork. And when you know, like, I'm really familiar with Celtic art, and the Scythian and the Celtic shit looks all. But I think that way about Vikings, about Anglo-Saxons. To me, it looks kind of the same. And I don't make much of a differentiation. It was Julius Caesar who first started making the differentiation between Germans and Celts, and that's kind of when they started shooting off in the different directions as a people. You know, Julius Caesar said all of the people east of the Rhine are Germans, all the people west of the Rhine were Celts or Gauls. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Today's just about the Protoceltz. I'm going to end the video there. Tomorrow we're going to get into, or the next show that I do is going to be called the Hallstatt culture, and that is when Celtic civilization begins proper in Hallstatt, Austria. But until then, have a great day, have a great night. My name's Richie Romance. This is the history of the Celts. I'm going to enlighten you with knowledge. Remember, unnecessary beef is more cows to breed. Peace.